Welcome to the month of April, everyone. Spring is here, and with it comes Easter celebrations, cautiously budding plants, birdsong, Earth Day, and of course, National Poetry Month. We've recommended some poets for you to read this month in a separate video, but we wanted to do a deep dive into one of our favorite female poets in honor of spring and National Poetry Month, and we found just the poem. This month, we're looking at Spring by Edna St.Vincent Millay. If you've never read her poetry, you're in for a treat. I personally discovered her in high school in a book of poetry from the school library. I loved her sonnets. I was hooked from there on. Shall we see if you like it? Let's listen to the poem as usual, and then we can break it down a bit.
To what purpose, April, do you return again? Beauty is not enough. You can no longer quiet me with the redness of little leaves opening stickily. I know what I know. The sun is hot on my neck as I observe the spikes of the crocus. The smell of earth is good. It is apparent that there is no death. But what does that signify? Not only underground are the brains of men eaten by maggots. Life in itself is nothing. An empty cup, a flight of uncarpeted stairs. It is not enough that yearly, down this hill, April comes like an idiot, babbling and strewing flowers.
Wow, she doesn't hold back much in this poem, does she? Did you catch the separation of the concept of appearance versus reality? What about her critical attitude about spring? Well, it's kind of hard to miss since this poem, despite her technical skill, is a modernist poem where being blunt is totally okay. And Milay was not one to soften too many edges for people, like at all in her poetry. According to the Poetry Foundation, quote, like her contemporary Robert Frost, Milay was one of the most skillful writers of sonnets in the 20th century, and also like Frost, she was able to combine modernist attitudes with traditional forms, creating a unique American poetry. But Milay's popularity as a poet had at least as much to do with her person. She was known for her riveting readings and performances, her progressive political stances, frank portrayal of both hetero and homosexuality, and above all, her embodiment and description of new kinds of female experience and expression. According to Nancy Milford, one of Milay's biographers, she became the herald of the new woman. She even went by the name Vincent, so that's what we'll call her too. Vincent's work and person were known to have zero separation. She personified her work and lived the lifestyle of the poet, no matter how many relationships she was in over the years. Her central relationship, for most of it, was writing. She knew that eventually death would come claim whomever she loved, something pretty clear in this poem. Vincent thought it best to divert the strong feelings she had into art. She never wanted to be fully owned or dominated, a viewpoint encouraged by her single mother. So she kept a kind of separation between soul and body that runs all through her work. As she got older, her themes and attitudes changed, however, to less cynicism and more mature and personal writing. You can see this in her sonnets especially, lyrical work, and short verse. Now this poem, Spring, was written after Vincent's intense affair with American poet Arthur Davison Ficke, a U.S. Army major who delivered dispatches to France in February of 1918. When they met, they fell madly in love, and their short tryst affected them the rest of their lives, producing sonnets by both. Now, given the year this was written, there's a lot of differing ideas over whether this was primarily in response to the affair or in response to all the death of people and ideas in World War I. It could also just be her personal dislike of how superficial spring is, which to her may have been a metaphor in and of itself for how fleeting pleasure can be. Either way, it's important to note that this was her first free verse poem, meaning the lines aren't in a specific rhyme scheme or metrical pattern. That looseness highlights the argument that spring is silly, or meaningless, or overrated. It's also useful to express the frustration of the speaker. In other words, the arrangement of the lines are meant to make the reader feel uncomfortable right along with the narrator. Spring is an 18-line poem that is contained within one set of lines and has a few themes: death, disappointment, and nature. Themes that run rampant through all of her work. Now, she uses a couple interesting literary devices. She begins by personifying spring itself by giving it the name April, the month most often associated with the season. She asks April a question using apostrophe, a figure of speech in which a character or speaker addresses someone who is absent or cannot see or hear the speaker. After her question, she answered it herself, saying, "Beauty is not enough." Now that line right there is her thesis in the poem, the central idea the poem is crafted around. She goes on to use clear imagery like redness and stickily to make readers uncomfortable, as well as crocus spikes, dirt, smells, and the hot sun. She uses this imagery in juxtaposition to the images of men underground eaten by maggots. She's clearly frustrated that life continues despite ongoing suffering and apparent meaninglessness of it all. She says as much in the last 4 lines, dropping metaphors describing life as nothing, an empty cup, and a flight of uncarpeted stairs. Now, another way she emphasizes the jarring feelings of the narrator is when she uses enjambment. One example is between lines 3 and 4 with, "You can no longer quiet me with the redness of little leaves opening." She only uses alliteration 1 time, though, in that same line. Now, one more thing to notice is that Vincent uses a bit of repetition, too, at the end where she repeats the words "not enough" to neatly reiterate her thesis. She then finishes the poem by using the simile of April, our personification of spring, coming down a hill babbling like an idiot. April, to her, comes with beauty and colors to decorate a world that is, in her reality, nothing. Wow, what a positive way to look at this time of year, huh? Well, Vincent did describe herself basically as either on or off in mood. Clearly this was an off mood day when writing this poem. Of course, this bluntness is a trademark of hers. Spring, though written in 1918, wasn't published until 1921 in Vincent's volume of poetry, 2nd April. The collection not only contained this poem, but a host of free verse and the sonnets she had written to Fick. The entire book celebrates the rapture of beauty and laments its inevitable passing. So, what was going on while she was writing poems like this? Well, the year previous, in 1917, she graduated from Vassar, a place she described as a hellhole, and moved to New York City to Greenwich Village. It was just becoming a bohemian writer's haven, so her timing was impeccable. Vincent gave some poetry readings and then quit a comfortable job as a secretary to a wealthy woman. She had her first book of poetry published, and in December, she secured a part in a play. Not surprisingly, she was soon involved in a relationship with the playwright, one that was off and on until late 1918. Vincent had affairs with several different men and women, and as such, long-term relationships tended to fall apart, or she broke up others. She was known to be pretty cold and fractured a good many hearts, but often stayed friends afterwards somehow. She had an almost endless line of interests since she was, at that point, a nationally known poet. Her works during this time reflect her spirit of nonconformity and Greenwich Village culture. In the middle of this, she met Fick, and Spring was written soon after they parted ways. She was also writing under the pen name of Nancy Boyd and wrote 8 stories for Ainsley's and 1 for Metropolitan. These stories exemplified Greenwich Village attitudes: anti-materialism, acceptance of nude bathing, rejection of popular conventions, and the joyful spirit of the Jazz Age. For the heroines in the stories, the question of getting hitched and love versus career repeats and repeats. The characters embrace the idea that bodily passions are unimportant compared to the needs of art. Some critics think that the stories are helpful to understand Vincent's poems. She also continued to work on poems in this period and also plays. At the same time, she had multiple marriage proposals she rejected in order to pursue her interests. She ended up going to Europe in 1921 to get her mental state together and escape relationship drama, but as usual, the drama didn't stop. Now, she did end up married to a man, Eugene, who took care of her to promote and foster her to work on her career, but also had an open marriage with her. He struck me as a sugar daddy, honestly, but maybe in a good way? I don't know. Yeah, there's so much to this woman, and I could go on, but we're out of time for now, so maybe we can cover more of her crazy life in a different video. How did you like the poem? What do you think of spring? Do you agree that it's fleeting and shallow, or do you love the beauty in spite of what you know, so to speak? What do you think of Vincent? Let us know in the comments, and see you next time.